You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is December 11th, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Tonight, we kind of have a little bit of a different show. We don't have a special guest tonight, just the Knuckleheads, but we're going to be talking justice because there's just a whole bunch of issues of justice that are out there. Some of them may be raising to constitutional crisis level, so we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So specifically, the topics we're going to get into, we're going to talk about the pardons that are happening. We are going to talk about the idea that a lot of people seem to be kind of cool with going around and gunning down CEOs. So we're going to talk about that. And then we also have the issue of the Daniel Penny verdict that has come up. So all of these are kind of really interesting issues around the concept of justice. And finally, we're going to talk in our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. We'll talk a little bit about Bill Maher and Neil deGrasse Tyson. But we always start off with a Liberty quote. And so the quote this time is our 25th president, Theodore Roosevelt. And I think this is a really appropriate quote for the show we're going to have today. No man is above the law and no man is below it. Nor do we ask any man's permission when we require him to obey it. Obedience to the law is demanded as a right, not asked as a favor. So I certainly agree with the first line of that. No man is above the law, no man is below it. I think that's totally appropriate. I think the rest of that quote is kind of interesting. It's certainly a little bit, it raises some sparks for libertarians because it's like, hey, we don't need anybody's permission to get you to obey the law. But, the way he talks about it, he also talks about it, too, as obedience to the law is demanded as a right. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to characterize that because, if we don't all have some basic contractual laws that we kind of agree with, there's kind of a right to expect a certain type of interaction, I guess, that you're not going to be assaulted or other things like that. So by somebody else. Anyways, what do you guys think about this? I think this is kind of an interesting quote from Mr. Roosevelt. And he's actually kind of an interesting guy given our times, too, as sort of, a bigger than life guy back in our presidential history. So what do you guys think about this?
Well, like you say, I agree that no one is above the law and no one should be below the law. But when you say we expect this thing as a right, that the obedience is a right, who has that right? Who holds that right? The government? I'm not sure what he meant by that. Who has the right?
The way I'm reading it, when he says obedience to the law is demanded as a right, it means that we all get something out of the idea that we have certain basic laws. I mean, keep in mind the laws were a lot simpler when he was alive. but I mean, imagine a set of laws that keep you from being assaulted, say, on a subway, right? It's almost a right to be left alone. Maybe somehow ties into this, the right that you should expect to be able to be left alone maybe is kind of what he's saying. Now, maybe this could certainly be abused. You could certainly go and say, hey, we're going to say that nobody can drink alcohol on Sundays.
And that's just my point. But Jason, that's just my point. Who has the right? Because if it's the government who has the right to require obedience, then that's step towards tyranny. Clearly.
Sure.
No, I think it is I think he's referring to the government has a right under the Constitution. So the Constitution allows the government to have certain powers, and they hold back from the government certain disabilities. So they disable the government to do certain things, and they give power to the government to do other things, including make law. So when the government goes and makes a law, and they do it under the processes for example, that we have here with the legislative branch, and then the executive branch signs on to it, so on and so forth. There's, a balance of power, and then the judicial branch gets to oversee it. And if there's any, issues with its constitutionality, it brings it up. Let's just say a right or a law is created by the government, and it is done all that, and it's constitutional. What's wrong with the government not having a right that people right to expect obedience to that law? In other words, how can they not demand it? I mean, they're going to demand it. It's a law at that point. So if they don't demand it, if they just ask hey, it'd be nice, can you give me a favor and follow the law, but no, they don't do that. You break the law, you could be prosecuted under the law, and you could be thrown into jail or given a fine or anything else. So, I mean, to me, he's talking about the government is demanding as their right to demand your compliance to a law.
The only pushback I'd have, Tim, on that is that you say they, but he specifically is saying we. And I'm reading that as we as a society, not we as the government. So, anyways, that's the only pushback I would have.
Then I still don't understand who gets to exercise this right, though.
Well, I think
it's, again, you could say, if we the people create the government, and under the government create laws to govern us the people, then it's us. It's we asking that people are demanding, either we are demanding obedience to the law. We in other words, so the collective, we collectively demand that everybody obey this law that we have constitutionally created here. And so I still, I don't have an issue with that, nor do I see that it's not within the realm of possibility for us to look at ourselves that way collectively.
So you're saying if the government creates a law, or no, let me back up here. If our elected representatives create a law that can withstand constitutional scrutiny, then we as citizens of the United States have a right to demand obedience to that law from our fellow citizens.
Pretty much. Now,
imagine
now
it.
I can go.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, imagine it's a law that says you can't just run over and set fire to Leon's house. I would guess in that case you would think you have a right to demand that we all have obedience to that law. Right?
Yeah. So then I can push back too on my own point. I can say, well, what about during Prohibition? Now, prior to Prohibition, the legislative branch respected the Constitution enough to go, oh gosh, we can't make laws regulating alcohol. That was not part of the Constitution. Oops. Well, let's make an amendment to this. Let's amend the Constitution. So I think it was the 13th Amendment or whatever. I can't remember which. Gave government the right, or the power, I should say, the power to regulate alcohol. Then they went into Prohibition. Okay, so here you are, constitutional law, constitutionally created. However, everybody went, was there obedience to that law? No. So
no, Tim. There must have been obedience. I mean, obviously, some people broke the law because they were still producing alcohol and consuming it. But of course, there was obedience to the law.
Okay, you're right. Yes, you're right. A lot of people obeyed the law, especially teetotalers. But a lot of people that wanted to drink alcohol did not, because against the law, I guess I won't do it anymore. Be a good boy or a good girl. But then the federal government found out that, oh gosh, there's too many people disobeying this law, and we can't enforce it. We can't enforce it without the states. They're not cooperating. And then, matter of fact, they want to make it legal. And so I guess we better come up with the 22nd Amendment to repeal the original amendment that gave them, I think it was the 18th Amendment now that I think about it. So the 22nd Amendment repealed the amendment that gave the federal government the right to regulate alcohol. Okay, now we're back to square one. So anyway, so you see what I'm saying?
Sure. And I think given that Theodore Roosevelt has so thoroughly confused the knuckleheads with this quote.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think this is a perfect segue to another president
Yes.
who is confused. Our current president, Biden. So I think it's probably a good time to move on to that first subject. And of course, we all know that Biden recently issued a pardon for his son, claiming that he felt like he's being unfairly prosecuted was what happened. But we do have a little bit of video that leads up to this, though, and I think it's good to sort of set the stage with that because this really helps us to see some of the inconsistencies, I guess, that have been happening here. So yeah, about a year or so ago, when charges were initially being brought against Biden, Hunter Biden, his dad was asked whether or not he would pardon him, given, that it looked like they were going to have some verdicts against him. And here's what he said. So, Leanne, can you play KOL number 1?
You're going through something that so many American families go through, the intersection of addiction and the criminal justice system, but you're not like most families. Was your son able to get a fair trial? Do you believe the Justice Department operated independently of politics? And for President...
Let me answer your question, and you ask his question. Regarding the family, I'm extremely proud of my son, Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know, and I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
So that was Biden saying that he wouldn't do that. And of course, here's the article. Maybe you could bring up the visual. President Biden issues pardon for son Hunter, claiming he was unfairly prosecuted on gun and tax charges. So this is an article from the Sky News here that we're looking at. But yeah, clearly after saying that he wouldn't do it, he decided he was going to do it. And I guess, this is kind of a big issue because now suddenly, this is so this winds up. Hold on a second. I got these articles out of order. So part of the issue is here that this is bringing up an issue where Biden is now talking about he's not only now just pardoning his son, which seems bad enough, but he's actually talking about pardoning other people within his administration as well. And one of the things that is disturbing about this is the initial issue was a gun charge and tax evasion charges.
Yes.
And now Biden has gone and said, hey, look, I'm pardoning him for anything between the period of about 2014 when he started working for Burisma in Ukraine, where some of this tax issues come from, reporting income from some of these different places, and, all the way up to today. And so, I mean, the problem is, what
No,
the
not
heck
today.
is...
It's up to the day he issued the pardon.
Oh, up to the day. Okay, well, that's pretty close to the day.
Yeah, well, yeah, fine. I got it. Yeah.
Unless he's gone out and committed some more crime. But the crazy thing is that seemed, constitutionally tenuous at best, this idea of pardoning somebody for undisclosed crimes. But then he said he's going to potentially, his administration has floated the idea that they're considering pardons for people even like Anthony Fauci, who,
Yes.
and of course, many other people that they're worried that the Trump Justice Department may be looking into. So anyways, let me throw this, I guess, back to you guys. And what do you guys think about this? This seems pretty crazy.
The only thing I want to say is that I thought that this pardon stuff only applied to people that had been convicted of a crime. Now, Is that I'm wrong on that, huh, Leon?
Yes, you're wrong on that. Yes.
Okay, so it could be something that somebody has not even been convicted of or even
Right.
known about. In other words, but then can a president say any and all crimes? So, for example, if back in, let's say, 2020, 4 years ago, Hunter Biden killed somebody and nobody knew about it, but forensically, they didn't know until suddenly they have evidence that, oh gosh, it was Hunter Biden. And we have a real good case. We could convict this guy easily. And but because of this pardon, I guess the guy gets off scot free for murder. And
Well, Tim, so let me moderate just a little bit because the president's pardon power, and Leon shared this before the show, but it's in the Constitution, and it says it's in reference to his military powers, but it says, and he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. So, if he's being impeached, he can't suddenly pardon himself for that. Although, this does beg the question: if he pardons himself for crimes before an impeachment, he could clear himself of everything before impeachment charges are brought up against him. So it does seem to be a very constitutionally crippling power. And as far as murder goes, most likely that would be a state offense, Tim. So he couldn't necessarily pardon people for state offenses, but in the case of some of these issues, where Hunter Biden may not have reported as a foreign agent and working for some of these companies and essentially being a bag man for his family, it sounds like in a lot of these cases, he's essentially being pardoned for all of those things without having to disclose any of it. So this is, pretty troubling.
And then that part about offenses against the United States, that's where you're differentiating those types of offenses from offenses like murder, where it would be, under state law and
Well,
obviously.
there are some murder cases, homicide cases that is within federal jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Like if you kill a congressperson in Washington D.C., that would be a federal law. That would require federal prosecution.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right, okay.
But this is a clear limitation where, say, Trump could not pardon himself from being charged in New York State for rape, if that was what the case was, right? And
Right.
clearly, we
Absolutely.
saw cases being brought in all these different states against President Trump,
Yes.
even though Trump never pardoned himself for any of these items. So,
But the main, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, okay, but I only play one on TV, okay. But the main problem I see, you see, okay, Joe Biden is obviously a sleazy scumbag, okay. He said that he was not going to pardon his son. I'm not going to pardon my son. I'm not going to pardon my son. And then he went out and did this broad pardon. Now, even though Joe Biden did a sleazy, unethical thing by pardoning his son for the crimes that we know about, the ones that we have identified, the things he went to trial on it, he pardoned him for those things. Fine, that is within his powers. I will grant him that. But where the problem comes in, you see what the thing says. It said offenses against the United States. That's what the pardon power says. Now, if, for instance, now Hunter Biden committed some crime, we don't know about it. It's undisclosed. We don't know about it. How is that an offense against the United States if we don't know about it? Why would Joe Biden then be able to pardon him for something that have not been established that is an offense against the United States?
Well, Leon, the only thing I can think of in this case is that because it says offenses against the United States, and Biden only has the power to essentially pardon people for crimes against the United States. You know what I mean? If he could pardon him for the federal crimes, but if there was a state law violated in any of these things, then that would still be open and fair game, I guess.
You're missing my point. You're missing my point. The Constitution is right there in front of you, said offenses against the United States.
Oh, yeah. And if he doesn't declare what the offenses
if
are,
this is not established, then how could he pardon him for it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it seems like this is a deal breaker for the Constitution to me. Can you imagine signing a contract with somebody that says you're bound to all the rules of the contract, but the other guy, he can wave a magic wand at any time and release himself from the rules
From
of
the
the
contract.
contract? I don't think any of us would sign a contract like that. So I think this appears to be kind of a deal breaker. It didn't seem so bad before. I mean, maybe the biggest stretch of this was with Nixon, where he
Yes.
was pardoned for anything related to, I guess, the Watergate break-ins and things coming from that. Certainly a lot smaller potatoes than what we're talking about here, where the because if you really go back to where this all stems from, it stems from this energy company Burisma and
Yes.
Hunter Biden, who has admitted that he only had that job because sitting on a board of an energy company, not because he knew anything about energy, but because of who his father was. And of course, his
Exactly.
father had jurisdiction of that area under President Obama. He was supposed to be managing the affairs, the United States affairs in that country. And he even admitted on tape to getting their country to call off a special prosecutor, get him fired,
The
who
fire
was
possible. Yes.
exactly
Yes.
who was looking into corruption in the company that Hunter Biden was sitting on the board of. And by the way, our FBI also has records of the CEO of Burisma having said that he thought Hunter Biden was dumber than his dog. Now, why would you pay a guy hundreds of thousands of dollars to sit on your board? And he knows nothing about energy. He knows nothing about Ukraine. So,
Well,
but
well,
his dad
Biden
is
said Hunter is the smartest man he know. So
yeah.
you could imagine. That's the standard. Okay. You know. But there is a even bigger problem with this thing. Okay. You see this thing of pardoning crimes that are undisclosed. Um, this thing gives if this thing could withstand constitutional scrutiny, this thing gives the president a power that is unbelievable. Now, let me tell you why. So, supposing now the president ordered some massive violation of our rights, he ordered it, but nobody knew about it, right? None of us. We didn't know about it. We didn't hear about it. Nothing. But then, at the end of it, just before he leaves office, he said, "I pardon these 500 people for some crime that they may have committed." Now, he doesn't disclose the crime for some crime that they may have committed. So then the people are now free. So within any administration, people can violate our rights. The president, just before he leaves office, pardon them. Then what the hell?
Yeah.
Everybody's free and clear, and we have to live with the repercussions of those violations of our rights. We have no recourse. This
And the most,
power,
yeah. Well, I was just going to say the
this
most.
power, this thing to pardon undisclosed crimes is something is such a violation of the founding of this nation. We cannot have these arbitrary laws in place where a president have almost unchecked powers to violate our rights as he damn well please.
Well, it flies in the face of the preamble, right? All men are created equal, right?
Exactly.
you know,
Yes.
except it sounds like some more equal than others is what they would have written had they known that Mr. Biden was going to come along and abuse the pardon powers in this way. But one thing I did want to get down to the consequences of what I was trying to talk about with Ukraine. We don't know the full extent of what the corruption did that was in Ukraine. And a lot of
Exactly.
what is happening in that country now with a war that is going on with Russia, that we have sent hundreds of billions, over $100 billion of our treasure to that country. And certainly I believe there's been over 1 million lives lost in that conflict.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this may all stem back from corruption that was having to deal with energy and pipelines and things that Biden was doing when he was vice president there. And we're
Yes.
not going to get to know about it if he shuts off any means of of investigating that farther. And by the way, that was all at the heart of the original Trump impeachment, because Trump simply in his impeachment, what he was being impeached for was trying to get that same prosecutor reinstated that Joe Biden had gotten fired.
Right. Yes.
Believe it or not, I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. But I mean, that's how crazy it is. And of course, Trump is the one getting impeached, and Biden, everybody acts like they don't see anything, hear no evil, see no
See no
evil.
evil. Exactly.
So
Yeah, this is all about Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, because it goes back to the 2014 coup, just after the coup, that installed the U.S. Sympathizing dude that's in there. Well, it wasn't
Zelensky.
Yeah, it was somebody before him, and he took over, I think, afterwards, for sure, right?
Yeah. That's true. That's right. Yes.
And so anyway, but that guy, so it's all about that, all this history leading up to where we are today. So, and if I could plug Scott Horton's book, Provoked, then and somebody wants to read about all that history, I would recommend that book as a place to start.
Well, I think we have a time enough to squeeze this little video in before the break. But, Biden essentially was saying, too, that there should be no exceptions and people should respect the law when Trump was the one on trial. So, Leon, can you play KOL number 2?
Good afternoon. Before I begin my remarks, I just want to say a few words about what happened yesterday in New York City. The American principle that no one is above the law was reaffirmed. Donald Trump was given every opportunity to defend himself. They found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
So now literally Donald Trump was being tried by people who said when they were elected, prosecutors who were saying, "But elect me and I'll go get Trump." In fact, we're talking about
exactly.
Yeah, and one of the guys, in fact, is Alvin Bragg. I think he's tied up in this one too, and he's the guy who is also tried to charge Penny, which we'll talk about later in the show as well. So, just crazy political prosecutions. But you know what? If you're watching this on public access, you're going to have to catch the rest of the show online, where we're going to get into talking about the Daniel Penny case and also the issues around the CEO murder as well. So go check that out. So back to the show. So did you guys have any other thoughts before we leave this topic behind?
I think what Biden said, anyone who thinks differently or says differently, whatever he's talking about, he's all high and mighty. He should have said, if he was truthful, he would have said, if anyone except for me.
Yes.
Said, that's what he should have said.
Yeah.
If he's being honest. But of course.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, Biden, it's crazy. Biden has such a history of dishonesty, and yet the media claims to have no memory of any of it, even though they've reported on it in the past.
But the thing about that case that Biden is so gleeful about, probably one of his most gleeful days in office, that he now was able to call Donald Trump a convicted felon. Well, it didn't work in the election, but that was the whole game. But you know what? Every American should be very happy that, well, we're not happy yet. If that case, let me back up on what I want to say. If that case survived judicial or constitutional scrutiny, every prosecutor in this land is licking their chops to take dead felonies or dead misdemeanors and turn them into live felonies or live misdemeanors, because that is exactly what Alvin Bragg did. He took 34 misdemeanors, which were already dead. They were past, the statute of limitations had already run out. He tied it to some novel way to some finance law, and suddenly they became felonies.
Well, what gets
If
me too,
this
Leon,
thing,
well, when he first did it too, he wouldn't even tell us what the crimes were. He charged
exactly.
Trump, and he wouldn't even disclose what the crimes were initially.
There we go. There we go. This goes back to our whole pardon
Yeah,
issue. But
yeah,
the point is, though, let us pray that this thing does not survive scrutiny, because all of us could be in trouble, because any prosecutor could take anything and turn it into a felony
yeah,
if they could find the right thing to tie it to. This is madness on steroids.
yeah. Well, speaking of madness, one of the, and it's funny, we seem to be getting tied to New York for a lot of this madness and other areas of Democrat control. But one of the big issues that has been in the news is a CEO was gunned down recently on the streets of New York, and it was a healthcare CEO. And Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual. Um, and we're not really going to get into a lot on this story about the actual killer and completely all of his motives, because we don't know yet. That part of the story still unfolding. But what is interesting is what the debate that this story has unleashed on the public, where a lot of people are exclaiming glee over the fact that a CEO, a healthcare, not a healthcare, a health insurance CEO, was gunned down. He was murdered on the streets of New York. And this particular story from media, it shows essentially something that happened on oh gosh, Piers Morgan's show, where you had this woman, Taylor Lorenz. And so she had written in some kind of a blog that she said, and the people wonder why we want these executives dead. She said after this guy was murdered. Well, she went on Piers Morgan's show and kind of doubled down on it. And we have the video of that. So let me show, Leon, can we show video KOL3?
Why would you be in such a celebratory mood about the execution of another human being? Aren't you supposed to be on the caring, sharing left, where you believe in the sanctity of life?
I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy. Unfortunately, because it feels like
Seriously.
I mean,
joy in
I
a
guess I would
man's
say
execution.
maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Of Americans that be murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care.
So here you have this class warfare breaking out, and speaking of which, nobody is above or below the law. I mean, here is a person that it sounds like a lot of people are exclaiming joy and glee over the idea that this guy has been gunned down. To me, it really says something about, I guess, the division that the Democrats have been instilling in this country for a long period of time, on whether it's race, class, whatever. In this particular issue, I think it's clearly class warfare. But I don't know. What do you guys think of it? I have some other thoughts, but I'll throw this to you guys.
Well, I can tell you for sure, Taylor Lorenz, she has a long history of some of the most lunatic things that you could imagine. Okay, she has said quite a few lunatic things, including this one that we just played. Now, this woman is nothing but scum. Okay, seriously, she's nothing but scum. You're telling me that just because you have some disagreement with the insurance companies in terms of their whether they deny care or deny the someone because they were seeking care on some blah 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 whatever, that is their job. They're doing their job. You make a contract with the insurance company, and the insurance company will decide, well, which one of the things they're going to say yes to or which you're going to say no to. That is their doing their job. They are there to make a profit in the process of doing their job. And Taylor Lorenz is saying now, if you disagree with the insurance company, you have the right to kill anyone who stand in your way of you achieving your political agenda. This is what she's saying. This one is scum and insane.
And she also forgets that it's government regulation that has created this distortion of the marketplace, and it's one of the health insurance is one of the highest regulated parts of the economy. And
Yes.
so, if Taylor wants to make a big if Taylor wants to make a change that she's in favor of, then she should try to become an executive herself, a CEO of one of these companies, and she can just, give her every claim that comes through. She can just give it the rubber
Yeah.
stamp. If she wants. She thinks she's so awesome. I'm sure she would too, right? So yeah, and let's see how long the insurance company lasts that she's in charge of. But anyway, not to mention what Leon said, the whole morality of wanting some innocent guy, trying to do his job in a highly
Exactly.
regulated environment to be killed. Make her
And,
mark.
yeah. And I mean, I could, understand the feeling if somebody had, say, committed fraud against you and it led to one of your relatives to be killed. But there's no evidence that this person engaged in any kind of a fraud. All we know is he sold products, and it's a product that will have some denials of claims.
Of
That's
course.
just part of the business. That if not everybody gets approved for every single claim, and that's part of the contract. Some people are going to buy contracts that don't cover as much as other people.
Right.
And so, and this is part of what's so appalling is what Tim has kind of alluded to is that, this is really signals that there's a big problem with this industry, but it's because of too much government. The idea that we buy health insurance so much differently than the way we buy any other type of insurance. You
Right.
don't insure your house for paint jobs. You don't insure your house for minor issues like cleaning the carpets, scrubbing the floors. Yet with health insurance, we expect that insurance to take care of everything from scrapes and bumps and bruises, potentially all the way up to life, ending
Like fire.
situation. Yeah, like chemotherapy or something like that, right? I mean,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
but that's the point. Yeah, with the house, we're talking about the reason that works in that market is because we're only worried about the catastrophe. And if that's all we're insuring for, then it becomes a manageable situation. But the price signal's dead in the health industry. And this is why everybody's so frustrated. And yet people like Taylor Lorenz just want more government. They don't want less government
Yes.
in it. They
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
she believes in this so-called universal health care, Medicare Part E being for everybody. She believes in that kind of nonsense, as if we don't see what's going on in Canada or in the United Kingdom, where they do have universal health care, and where you have people get into waiting lines that are so damn long, they die before they get the treatment that they need. She don't see these things, but some of that is happening here in the United States. Look at what's a very good example of universal health care in the United States? Look at veteran affairs. Some of these vets who have gone overseas, served this country, and they come back here now, and they have to get in line to wait to get health care. Sometimes 8 months, 9 months, sometimes a year, and some of them end up dead because this is government-run healthcare. We could put all kind of fancy name on it. Oh, it's for the vets. We're gonna take care of the vets. Oh, it's for the vets. We could put all kind of fancy names on it, but it's a government running it. And whenever the government touch anything, it produces misery in great abundance.
Well, and the reason it does is because it's really trying to ignore reality and kill price signals. I mean,
Yes,
like all things, healthcare is a scarce commodity too, and the best way to get more of it is to put a price on it and let it compete in the marketplace with all the other things that people want to do, instead of trying to
absolutely.
act like there's no scarcity and just demand. I mean, this is the problem when people say there's a right to healthcare, that they're essentially trying to act like there's no scarcity. And what that really is, if you're saying it's a right, then you're you're really saying it's charity, because if somebody else has to do it and they have to give it, then that's unfortunately they want to use government for this charity, which is not really charity anymore. It's when it's at the force of a gun. So yeah,
it's not the government doing it; it's we paying for it.
Yeah,
we taxpayers.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's but it's funny you brought up veterans and the Veterans Administration. That's actually a good segue to our next story, which is the Daniel Penny story. And that particular story is, maybe you could bring up the visual on that, Tim, or I mean, not Tim, Leon. But essentially we're taken right back to New York again, and Alvin Bragg. This is just some of the craziness that's happening there. So there's a government-run subway system that, of course, doesn't work very well and has just tons of crime. Let's see. I think I have a article on that too. Yeah, it says. What's this say? Murder soar 60% on New York subways, nearing record. So, and you can see they've even brought the military in to help in their policing of the subways. So, I mean, let's not have any illusions about this being a wonderful service that the government is providing. But anyways, this is something where essentially they're doing such a terrible job with how well they're running the subways and the amount of crime that's happening on there. That people were being assaulted constantly. And there was a case where a guy named Daniel Penny, who was I guess somebody who had been in the service, and he was just a student at this point, and he was taking the subway, and he was seeing somebody who was threatening other passengers, and he jumped in. In fact, we even have him to tell his own story. We have a clip from him. So, Leon, maybe you could play clip KOL number 4. So I've got this broken into 2 segments.
This was a scary situation. And Mr. Nearly came on. He was threatening. I'm 6'2", and he was taller than me. I was scared for myself, but I looked around. I saw women and children. He was yelling in their faces, saying these threats. I couldn't just sit still. And the 3 main threats that he repeated over and over was, "I'm going to kill you. I'm prepared to go to jail for life, and I'm willing to die." And then some people say that this was about race, which is absolutely ridiculous. I didn't see a black man threatening passengers. I saw a man threatening passengers, a lot of whom were people of color.
So now in the next clip I want to show, it actually gets into what happened. We'll actually have video that I've overlaid onto his discussion of what occurred next. So Leon, can you play KOL 5?
I knew I had to act, and I acted in a way that would protect the other passengers, protect myself, and protect Mr. Neely. I used this hole to restrain him, and I did this by leaving my hand on top of his head to control his body. You could see in the video there's a clear rise and fall of his chest, indicating that he was still breathing. And I'm calibrating my grip based on the force that he's exerting. And I was trying to keep him on the ground until the police came. I was praying that the police would come and take this situation over. I didn't want to be put in that situation, but I couldn't just sit still and let him carry out these threats.
So, again, you can see from the video, no police around, and here's 3 people trying to restrain him. And of course, Daniel Penny was the only one charged in this case. In fact, there's a little bit more to get to in the story with that. But this is really kind of a case of competing narratives, because depending upon who you're listening to, it's a completely different story. I think, though, it's important, though, to that was the way Daniel Penny essentially has said this thing happened in his own words. He was just acquitted, and thank goodness, because I think a lot of people were worried that he was going to be, be a martyr of this system. But there was. I think it's probably good to hear what the actual witnesses on that train said at the moment that it ended. And the Free Press put together some great video where they took all these different camera angles and they time-stamped them and played them in sync of when they were happening. And it shows these were the actual people who were on the train, and this is what they said. So I think it's worth hearing that so that we all kind of have a perspective of what other people saw in that moment. So can you play KOL 6, Leon?
He's gonna tell the people about the hurt spot. He's like, I'm ready to hurt somebody, I'm ready to do this. And you right here, like I said, I don't think he's gonna know. Everybody looked, and he was about to saw him. He came in and he tried to this while the cop was coming. They took mad. Everybody, I was falling out home.
Yeah.
They took mad long to come. They was trying to resist him on somebody's gate. They took mad long.
I guess he was pissed or something, but I looked at him, right? And then he started taking off his sweater, dummy hard, and then he threw it. And then he told like everyone that he had like a good day and that he don't care what happens today. He don't care about going to jail, but that someone's dying to him.
The guy with the brown jacket took him to the ground.
Yeah, he took him to the ground and to the ground. Not a hard chokehold, just enough to secure him, and the guy fought. And he kept holding him, all right? And then that's when everybody totally realized what was going on. And I think this guy's on drugs, you know, because when he came in, he was unbelievably off the charts. He scared the living daylights out of him.
So here you have, in their own words, the witnesses. This guy scared the living daylights out of everyone. The guy who was killed, Jordan Neely, another guy saying the police took mad long to come. That's what he kept saying. They took mad long to come. He said everybody was trying to call the police, but nobody was coming, and these were the only people who were restraining the situation. And of course, the other woman also said that they were threatening her as well. And I think one of the other issues of race here, if you notice the race of all these people, this wasn't just a bunch of white people who were being threatened here. This was, a nice rainbow of people from New York City that were being threatened here. So anyways, we've got more to show, but I just wanted to throw this to you guys at this point. What do you guys think about what you've seen so far? I mean, do you think this was justifiable? I mean, certainly it sort of brings up visions of the George Floyd thing, where we saw a cop sitting on a guy's neck, and here you had a guy who was holding him in a chokehold. But still, aside from that, much different circumstances, as far as these not being law enforcement. This is just people who are having to fend for themselves because of complete failure of government. What do you guys think?
Well, I didn't see the autopsy report on the guy that died, but it could. I don't know. I'd look for the same thing like in George Floyd. That guy was going to die anyway. I mean, he could have been forced to sit on a stool and probably died. I mean, he's had so much drugs in his system, and he was just and also had some congenital heart defect or something else. Anyway, but I'm glad glad this guy was acquitted. Didn't do anything wrong. He was in a save somebody's life. It was self-defense. And, it's too bad the guy keeled over, but he shouldn't be taking those kinds of drugs in the future. Stick to pot or something. It's like, seriously.
The sad thing about this is that if Jordan Neely was white, we wouldn't be discussing this case right now. We would not. Okay? Or everything else being equal, except that Daniel Penny, if he was black, we would not be discussing this case right now. But because Daniel Penny is white, Jordan Neely, God rest his soul, was black, it suddenly become an issue of race. Suddenly. And all the race grifters like Al Sharpton and Hawk Newsom from BLM, all of them comes out from the rock, from underneath the rock from whence they reside, and they have decided to stand up for us black people. These people are sick. They are destroying the very fabric of our nation. These people run around the country telling us, oh, they believe in Martin Luther King. Well, Martin Luther King said, you should judge a man by the content of his character. Okay? Judge by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. That is what he said. But these people don't know this, or they conveniently ignore it, as they always out there trying to stand up for black people. All they're doing is sowing the seeds of our destruction. They're going to divide us by race, and they will not be happy until we end up in a race war in this great land of ours. That is what they're aiming at.
Yeah. So
but like Tim said, I'm glad that justice was truly served, and Daniel Penny was acquitted. Even though the judge tried to force a conviction on them, he pulled a little bait and switch kind of thing, but the jury came back with the correct verdict in my mind. acquittal.
Well,
That is what it should have been. As a matter of fact, this case should not have been brought in the first case.
yeah. Well, and that's part of the issue, right? Is why a case that seems so cut and dry with the witnesses, with the person's background who is being accused here. Mr.
Yes.
Penny doesn't seem to have anything in his background other than service to the country. And it seems like it's a pretty cut and dry issue that New York City has failed in its duty to protect its citizens on its subways. And everybody essentially supports his story who was there. And yet the narrative that is being given out by people who are trying to make division in this country is crazy. Leon, maybe you could bring up a visual here. One of the things we heard when this first happened is everybody talked about the fact that, it wasn't, some crazy person who was violent, who was who was the problem here. Everybody talked about this being a Michael Jackson impersonator, and this was the picture that they often showed in the media, and this is Jordan Neely, but it's a picture of Jordan Neely about 10 years before this happened. And I
Right.
mean, this is part of the issue here, is how unbelievably badly framed this whole thing was. So they're talking about this guy who's just a Michael Jackson impersonator, and he was hungry, and he was threatening people because he was hungry, and therefore nobody had the right to essentially use any violence or any kind of self-defense against this person. But some of the things that the mainstream media was trying to keep hidden is things like the idea that he was guilty of all of these previous crimes. We're not talking about, so aside from him not just being a simple Michael Jackson impersonator, he had already been arrested 43 times or 42 times. So
Yes.
this is not an issue of somebody who is just there peacefully panhandling in front of people. And in this one case that was reported on Fox, it said one woman sustained a broken nose and a fractured orbital when she was punched, and there was another person who was also punched by this Jordan Neely. Gosh, it was there was a quote in here somewhere. Oh, here it says, "Out of nowhere, he punched me in the face," the victim told the New York Daily News. He said he'd seen Neely before looking for food in trash bins. But the point is, this is a person with a history of violence where they had assaulted
Yes.
people, and the police knew this. And he's being left to roam the subways of New York for more victims. And when somebody finally stands up, so I mean, this is part of the issue of narrative. And here was another story where they talk about the 43 cases, and you talk about framing. There was, oh darn it, let me close this advertisement out that's blocking the story. Darn it. Oh, well, anyways, in this particular story, they had talked about an ACLU person who said that it was trying to misrepresent, essentially attack the character of the victim when you bring up the 42 arrests. I mean, 42 arrests, and you're hurting the character of the victim. I mean, don't you think 42 arrests likely means that that might have something to do with what happened? If somebody's been arrested,
Exactly.
and their behavior is such that.
And what is even the further sickness of all of this? This is not yet over for Daniel Penny. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but the father of Jordan Neely is suing Daniel Penny civilly in civil court right now. And that is still outstanding. But I hope to God they throw that case out. But the point is, though, that nobody want to ask. So where the hell was this father when his son was suffering with all his problems all over New York? Where the hell was the father? But now that his son ended up in an unfortunate circumstance, I'm sure Daniel Penny did not intend to kill this guy. From everything we know, he did not intend to kill him, but the guy ended up dead. Where was the father all of this time, all before that? Where was he?
And just to add to that, Leon, Jordan Neely was homeless at the time and on drugs.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, where was, all of these people who are claiming that they're the black community who are behind Jordan Neely right now, who are claiming vengeance. And we'll look at a video later about BLM coming into the picture as well with their narrative on this. But where were they when Daniel, or when Jordan Neely needed all this help? They show up after he's dead and claim that somebody else is responsible. Where were they if they're in his community? Well, why aren't they helping him? So this is
there is grifters only care when somebody died. When George Floyd died, BLM became rich. That's all they care about. When George Floyd died, Ibram X. Kendi got a whole bunch of money at the University of at Boston University or wherever the hell it is, and became a rich man. And up to now, we don't know what the hell he have done with the $30 or $40 million that he got. We don't know. That's when the grifters come out.
Well, and this all, speaks to narrative and why maybe so many people have different perspectives of this. And Leon, we have a story that came out after Daniel Penny was acquitted. And this was one of the mainstream media stations. I guess we'll figure out which one when we show the clip. It's ABC or somebody. But look at how they frame the whole thing when you watch this, because we've already seen Daniel Penny's narrative and we've seen the witnesses' narratives. So let's see kind of how mainstream media is framing the narrative. So, Leon, it's KOL 7.
Jordan Neely was threatening others. They said that he had thrown this was last year, back in May, that Jordan Neely had thrown on the ground his jacket, was loudly ranting about being hungry and thirsty, and that he was approaching a bench full of women, and that's when Daniel Penny reacted. The jury clearly went home on Friday when that manslaughter charge was dismissed and thought about this, and they were ready to deliver their verdict today.
So, Brian, is there any recourse for prosecutors in this case at this point?
As the facts exist now and today as we know them, no. Something happened within the jury room during deliberations that was inappropriate, illegal, or not supposed to happen. Theoretically speaking, the prosecution could have an appeal based on that.
So I sped it up just a little bit while the other guy was talking, but essentially, look at how they framed it. Once again, they're not showing somebody who was, on drugs and, getting arrested 42 times. They're showing somebody who was peacefully dancing on the subway train.
Exactly.
Essentially, and trying to spin a narrative. They talk about the fact that he was hungry getting on the train. He throws his jacket down, and then Daniel Penny reacted, right? They don't talk at all about the fact that he said he was going to kill people. I mean, this is all just a narrative. That,
Daniel Penny just saw this black guy and he just got scared and he just jumped up and reacted. It was out of in a vacuum. He did this. When we have video of what was going on, we have the witness testimony of what was going on underground in that subway. We have all of that. But all of that don't matter as long as we can do the race grifting. That's all that matters to them.
Yeah. Well, we also have a video of BLM now jumping into the fray after all of this as well. So not only do you have the mainstream media trying to spin this narrative that, maybe they just let a guy off who shouldn't have been let off, and it's crazy, the narrative. But now listen to what some of BLM is calling for after this. Leon, can you play KOL 8?
How can you make a moral appeal to a people that have no moral code? How can you preach love to racists that got Dr. King killed? How can you promote love to a nation that is built on theft and genocide?
That's right.
What we preach is unity, black unity. Just like everybody else seeks justice on their own, just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
So again, we heard the witnesses. It wasn't just somebody jumping up and being loud. It was somebody threatening to kill people and was willing to go to jail. and
this guy is like, I'm sorry, Timmy was going to say something?
No.
Oh, I noticed this guy, he's just making it sound like, it was just like Leon being loud on the train. That's all it was. There was nothing more than that. And that's how we end up dead. That's all he's making it out to be. When we know the guy was threatening people on the train, we know, but you just even spoke about the fact that some woman was assaulted on the train. We know all of that. And still we have these race grifters out there telling us, well, we're just being loud and we should retaliate and blah blah blah. This is what I'm saying. Look at this guy. He also quoted said that this is what got Dr. King killed. Oh, we're talking about Dr. King now. You didn't hear the part about judge by the content of character. You didn't hear that part. That part means nothing to you.
Yeah. The 42 arrests didn't have anything to do with the content of the character.
Yeah.
But
now you're being judgy.
Well, there is one other little aspect I wanted to, before we dismiss this, but there's the issue too of this DA clearly bringing politics and not essentially having blind justice there in New York. And one of the aspects of this case that really shone through was with the, let's see, there was what's that? There was a guy who was yeah, here it is. Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual on this. So if you remember in the video where it showed there was people helping Daniel Penny hold down Jordan Neely, the one guy who was holding him down, I guess he was Hispanic. I'm not sure. His name was oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. Eric Gonzalez.
Yes,
so,
there were one Hispanic, and I think the other guy who was holding it was black. Actually, with two people trying to help Daniel Penny. I think one was Hispanic and one was black.
I guess the point is of the narrative. Daniel Penny was the only white guy holding this guy down, and he was the one who seemed to selflessly get himself in to protect these people. Well, he's the only one who charges were brought against. Because if you saw in that video, there were 3 people who were involved in holding him down, and Daniel Penny was the only one who was charged. And it turned out that one of the guys, this Eric Gonzalez, he took off. He didn't want to be, tied up in this whole thing. And after the police, went and rounded him up, he changed his story for a deal, so he essentially started saying that things he told them initially weren't true. And that, he was already holding him down when I got on the train and everything else, even though this flies in the face of what all the other witnesses were saying. So it just, it's absolutely outrageous that, here it looks like Daniel Penny, if there was any racism in this, Daniel Penny may have been the person who was only charged because he was white.
Right, exactly. This is exactly what I'm saying. If not for his race, we would not be talking about this right now.
Right. And remember too, we're talking about the same district attorney. We talked about this story on our show before, but there was a guy, a bodega worker in New York, and his name was Jose Alba. And he was practically a senior citizen, and he was just doing an honest day's work in this bodega. Here's a picture of him. And he wound up being assaulted by a guy who came in, and he had more melanin. It's the best way to describe it. And suddenly, Jose Alba reacted in self-defense in this particular case. The guy came in because apparently his girlfriend tried to use an EBD card in the store and it wasn't working. And so he wouldn't give him the bag of chips because he couldn't get the EBD card to work to pay up the chips. Right. So she sent her boyfriend in the back to beat him up until he gave him the chips. And so he's delivering a beating to this old man, and he picks up a box cutter and stabs him, and this guy dies. And what happened, even though it was all on video, the same district attorney threw Jose Alba at Rikers Island. So I mean, this is kind of what we're talking about, what we're dealing with in these I don't know what else to describe it as, these Democrat-run Blutopian hellholes. I think it's
George Soros. This is George Soros' plan to destroy the United States. You get all these district attorneys, Alvin Bragg, and you had Kim Gardner and Kim Fox and all of them. He support these people who are doing nothing, but either they are soft on crime And every time you look around, they're always trying to will downgrade a crime from a felony to maybe a misdemeanor. Sometimes they don't charge certain crimes, all this sort of thing. That is George Soros' plan to destroy America. He support all these DAs around the country, and that is exactly what they're doing. They had this one going on here in San Francisco, but they removed him from office. Thank God. They have somebody else now. They will Paul Gascoigne just lost in Los Angeles. Thank God. They have somebody in there. Hopefully will do a better job in enforcing the law. But this is the whole plan, to create chaos in this country. That's what they're trying to do. These George Floyd's, these George Soros DAs. That's what we call them as a group. Lord help us.
Before we get to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, I just wanted to circle back to our quote, because I think this really gets to it, at least the beginning of this quote. No man is above the law, no man is below it. And in all of these cases, we're seeing people who, based upon either their skin color or politics, somehow some people are being put below the law, meaning that they're going to have it come down extra hard on them, and some people are being raised up above the law. And this is just, absolutely crazy. I mean, certainly we saw that in a sane world. I think that the test for me of Daniel Penny is, if I saw this guy, would I want him living next door to me? And absolutely, right? So, I mean, I have no problem with this, right? And I think that's the issue, right? I mean, if you saw somebody, and they're saying he's, somebody that needs to be prosecuted, are you scared of him? To me, I wasn't, from what I saw there. So I don't know, how you would test it, but to me, that's the gut test that I would do with this. I just think this is crazy.
Exactly.
So
I agree. Totally. I totally agree with that.
Well, speaking of narratives, I guess this brings us to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And we actually had a case of Neil deGrasse Tyson was on Bill Maher's show recently, and he was talking about the science, and I guess he was kind of exposed by Bill Maher as well. The science is apparently super woke now. So, but they were essentially getting into a discussion about trans athletes involved in women's sports. And so we have some video clips from that, and I think this in a nutshell kind of shows what went down with this last election, and it's certainly what Bill Maher thinks. So let's show the video clip KNP1.
This is in Scientific American, less than a year ago. Inequity between male and female athletes is the result not of inherent biological differences between the sexes, but of biases in how they are treated in sports. That's nuts. And it sure ain't scientific, and it's in Scientific American. And that's why the Democrats lost the election. It's true.
Bill, every 20 minutes on your platform, you come up with another reason why the Democrats lost. You already have the answer. They lost the election. So anything you say is why they did it.
First of all, you don't watch this show, so you don't know that. I know you don't, and it's okay.
So that was the first part of the clip, but it's funny. He just keeps doubling down, and so this second part of the clip really kind of goes into this. But I mean, we're not talking about whether or not it's okay, for somebody to be trans. We're talking about the issue of saying that whether women should have a protected sports category or not, because that's literally why we have this category. Because if they were competing head on with men, they wouldn't really be there. So anyways, let's hear the rest of Bill Maher's argument, KNP2.
Engage with the idea here. What I'm asking is, Scientific American is saying basically that the reason why an WNBA team can't beat the Lakers is because of societal bias.
What you're saying is not Scientific American says that. An editor for Scientific American says that, who no longer has the job. So don't indict a 170-year-old magazine because somebody...
Okay, this is called Scientific American, and they're printing something
because someone enters the cesspool that is social media and then participates in that exchange. So
why can't you
let's talk about science.
Why can't you just say this is not scientific and Scientific American should do better? You don't see a problem here?
Long distance swimming, women might actually have the advantage. You look into that. Yeah.
Maybe long distance swimming.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I've looked into it. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to file you under part of the problem.
No, but this is the point, right? I mean, here you have a scientific magazine, and we're not talking about whether people should have the right to be trans or not. We're talking about the fact that, are women and men different in competing in sports? And I mean, the idea that a science magazine is coming out and saying that this is all just socialization and bullshit is crazy. What do you guys think about this? I thought it was real great takedown myself.
Tim, you want to go ahead?
So it seemed to me that Bill Maher was the one, and both of them agreed. I didn't see a disagreement. It was the black guy saying that, oh yeah.
You didn't see a disagreement? You did not see a disagreement?
Well, the volume is really low on my iPad here when I look at it. So just fill me in, Leon, and maybe you should talk about it too at the same time, because I saw that they were both kind of agreeing that this whole thing is crazy. What Scientific American was saying. What did they say?
No.
Okay.
No.
Correct me.
Well, first let me say Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay. Yeah. Was a very prominent astrophysicist. Okay. But today he's nothing but a damn clown. That's what he is. What the debate was about was whether a man, biologic man, competing in women's sports, whether that is fair or reasonable. Do biologic men have an inherent advantage over biologic women? That is what they were talking about. Neil deGrasse Tyson is claiming it is not the case, and he's supposed to be a scientist. An astrophysicist.
And Leon, let me just add a little bit more characterization here. Can you bring up the visual? So this was another article I was going to show that Neil deGrasse Tyson has defended. Essentially, these are people like Piers Morgan and others have brought these cases out against them. Hey, look, there's been some studies recently that have shown that female athletes have lost like 900 medals now to trans athletes.
Yes.
And I mean, this is, before that was part of the issue, right? Is that people who were on the left were literally saying there's no evidence of this. There's just a few cases here and there, and you got nothing. So they come out with a study showing that 900 medals have been denied to women who have been essentially forced to compete against trans athletes. And by the way, that was Leah Thomas, and that was the front of this story from Spock's, where this is a woman, I can't remember, Riley Gaines, who was a woman swimmer who didn't get to take the podium because Leah Thomas took her spot on the podium. So this is what the issue has been about.
So it's safe to assume,
it's not only. I'm sorry. Go ahead, guys. If you want to say something, go ahead.
I just say it's safe to assume that trans females that are going female to male are not tearing up men's sports and just winning right and left. Is it safe to say
not
that?
At all? Right. Yeah. Not at all.
Okay. I just want to clear that.
Which should tell us
we're talking about the opposite.
Yeah.
Where a trans
a trans woman.
A trans
woman,
female,
yes.
Okay. Is tearing up women's sports and winning right and left. Okay. Just want to make sure I got that clear. That's all I need to say too.
And Jason, you just said that they're being allowed to compete in women's sports, but that's not only the problem. In that same Leah Thomas is NCAA sporting event that you're showing there. Leah Thomas, if that is his or her name, whatever the hell it is these days, still has all his genitals intact. And they are allowing him or her into the woman's locker room to change in front of them, take off his clothes in front of them. And the woman is supposed to do in kind. And if the woman complained, they were in some case chastised, or in some case, I don't know if anybody was actually penalized, but they were chastised for complaining about this. And this is happening all over the place. That is not only competing in the sports, which is bad enough, but they're allowing these men, like I could get up tomorrow morning and I could say, well, I I'm a woman, and as a matter of fact, I'm only 20 years old. I could get up tomorrow morning, and they're gonna let me in the same place like Riley Gaines, who's in her early 20s. I should be let into the locker room with somebody like Riley Gaines. Come on, this is ridiculous. And this Neil deGrasse Tyson, who used to be a prominent scientist, no, he's a clown. He's a fool.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing is, I mean, as a libertarian, I mean, I feel like if we just let the market decide these things, that should be the way we do it. But because we have government so far involved in all of the schools, and so many, government wants to be involved in our restrooms and everything else, right? That it has to be a one size fits all solution. And I mean, I think if we just allowed the market to figure this out, we would have some institutions that would allow this and some that wouldn't. And people would voluntarily figure out if this worked or not. And if it turned out to just be a niche thing, then that's what would happen. But unfortunately, there's no freedom to figure any of this out. It's just going to be, laid this way. And then you have this perverse situation where women are feeling like if they complain about it, they're going to be denied their spots on these teams, which is just insanity. So, yeah. So, I mean, now if it's a club and they say, hey, look, there's a club out there that doesn't allow this, and we're a club that does, and you have a choice to go choose which one you want to go to, that's fine. But this idea that it has to be one size fits all is just nuts, so many things. If we just followed sort of the libertarian thing, let the market figure it out, I think we'd, get to something that looked a heck of a lot more sane than what we're currently dealing with.
Well, I would not. If the marketplace was going, we're going to allow the marketplace to figure this out. I would not have a problem with this. I really won't, as long as we are talking about the adults. But when you get to the children, we're talking about child abuse. I really have a problem with children involved in this thing. When they're starting to give them puberty blockers, they give them hormone therapy, and in some cases even surgery they give to teenagers. This is nothing but child abuse. Seriously.
And that's a deeper dive down the rabbit hole. We had to go to that one.
We had not got rabbit hole before. I know.
Yeah. But this is just, the crazy thing is I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about this subject before, and he is, if he would take the libertarian position in this and say that, hey, let's let everybody figure it out for themselves. But he's not. He's comfortable with these centrally planned solutions. He just doesn't like it when it's going against the direction he prefers, whatever that is. So anyways, this is so anyways, that to me is the bigger issue here is the narrative, though, spin that we talked about and all these other justice things. And here is a magazine like Scientific American that Bill Maher is bringing up as well. And there's also a narrative that's being spun that clearly has nothing to do with the science, I guess, is the best way to say it. And so, just in a nutshell, what's wrong with our society, why we can't agree on anything. We have these narratives that are being spun by what are supposed to be and the idea is they're supposed to be somewhat objective news sources, especially Scientific American. But you see,
the thing is that we got lost with. Tim, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
I was remembering what he said. The scientist guy that he said, Bill, you're listing all the reasons why the Democrats lost this year, or some words to that effect. Because. I thought he was alluding to the whole sense that these woke crazy ideas, especially where you're having biological males competing against biological females, and you wonder why they're always winning. I mean, it's like it's that kind of thing that is part of why Democrats lost, is what I thought he was saying.
Yes, well, he did say that. Yes, he did say that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So anyway,
that's been part of the thrust that Bill Maher has been on the past few months, is that the Democrats have gone way too woke. And, Bill Maher is still on board being a Democrat. He just likes the old school socialist Democrats versus these wokesters that, want to police your language and everything else.
The so-called classic liberals. But the one thing, I'm sorry.
He's just mad that it went off the rails and he wants to bring it back. Just let's talk about stupid economic ideas like socialism. Okay.
Socialism, yes. But the whole thing that we losing in this debate, and this to me is so very important, is this magazine, Scientific America, is going to print this nonsense. You see, the point that we have to accept, that society must accept if we're going to go forward in our civilization, if we're going to develop our civilization further, we must accept the fact. It does not matter from where ideas come. It does not matter. It could come from John, Harry, the Democrats, the Republicans, the socialists, like Bernie Sanders. It does not matter where ideas come from. The issue is, could that idea withstand scrutiny? That is the point. Could it withstand scrutiny? And you see, this is why Scientific America is now going to the dogs, because they never scrutinize that idea that they publish in their magazine. If an idea cannot withstand intellectual scrutiny, it must die. And Scientific America is doing the very same thing that is anti-science.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they will die as a magazine, and let's see what happens.
Okay, there you go. I'll be fine with that.
Well, I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our show. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.